There are so many carrier oils out there, but since they have a limited shelf life, it's really not a great idea to buy all of them. So what do you do when a formulation you're looking at making calls for a carrier oil you don't have? Hey bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me, and today I'm going to teach you 4 different ways to approach making carrier oil substitutions when you're formulating. This video is just about plant-based carrier oils and butters. I won't be touching on esters, waxes, pseudo butters, silicones, mineral oils, or anything else. It's just plant-based oils and butters. One of the easiest ways to learn about making substitutions for ingredients is to look up the ingredient in the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia. Every single entry includes a section on substitution suggestions and things to consider when formulating with that ingredient. If the formulation you are looking at making a substitution in is one of mine, make sure you're reading the full partner blog post. I always provide a list of formulation-specific substitution suggestions at the end of the formulation. I also wrote an entire blog post on carrier oil substitutions back in 2013 and have kept it updated, so you can check that out. I'll link to it in the description box below. It contains some really helpful tables and is a very helpful written reference. To start with, here are 7 rules or guidelines when making substitutions in a formulation. Number 1, research the ingredient that you need to substitute out so that you understand what it brings to the formulation. Number 2, never just leave out an ingredient. You always need to replace it with something else to keep the formulation in balance. Number 3, start small. I'd say 50 to 100 grams for a lotion and 40 grams or under for an anhydrous formulation. What you're looking for is a batch size that is large enough that you can use a product a bit and get a feel for it, but not so large that if it sucks and you have to throw it away, that it's very heartbreaking, and also not so small that it's unworkable, that you can't like stir it or blend it as needed. If you don't already have a scale that is accurate to 0.01 grams, I highly recommend getting one for those small batches and that formulation work. I've shared links to the scales that I have had good experiences with in the equipment section of the Humblebee and Me encyclopedia. Number 4, take tons and tons of notes. And number 5, watch the formulation over time so you can see if and how it changes. Number 6, go ahead and embrace the it depends-ness of formulating. There are not a lot of hard answers in this world, so just roll with it. And number 7, don't be afraid to break the rules and see what happens. You might end up with a formulation that is harder or softer or greasier or lighter than it was supposed to be, but you probably won't end up with something that is just completely unusable garbage. You might just end up with a cream that you would prefer to put on your feet rather than your face. And when you make something that really wasn't what you wanted it to be, think about what it is rather than what you wanted it to be. Is it, say, a lot oilier than you wanted it to be? Could that oiliness make it an amazing massage product? Is it perhaps a lot harder than you wanted it to be? Maybe you just stumbled upon a great way to tweak formulations for hotter weather. Think about your creations outside the box, outside of what they were supposed to be, and think about what they could be. When you know you need to make a carrier oil substitution, here are 3 questions that you should think through first. Question number 1 is how much of the oil you need to replace is present in the formulation. The more of the oil that is present in the formulation, the more important it is, and the more changing it out will change the finished product. There's no hard percentage line that tips an ingredient from being like unimportant to important. It just really depends on the ingredient and the formulation. Question number 2 is, what is the formulation for? What's it supposed to achieve? What is it supposed to be like? And how is that oil that you're looking to swap out contributing to all of that? For example, is it a solid body butter bar that contains 80% solid cocoa butter? In a formulation like that, the cocoa butter is really important because it is key to what makes the formulation solid and gives it its structure, and is also going to be playing a huge role in what its melting point is. Perhaps you are looking at an emulsion that contains 4% cocoa butter. In a formulation like this, the cocoa butter is a lot less important because there is 96% of a formulation beyond the cocoa butter that is impacting the skin feel and the viscosity. So in a situation like this, swapping out the cocoa butter won't make nearly as much of a difference as it would in the body butter bar formulation. And for a third example, say you're looking at an emulsion that uses cocoa butter at a pretty low usage rate, but the lotion is called chocolate body lotion and it contains a bunch of other chocolatey themed ingredients. In a case like this, with that low usage rate, the cocoa butter isn't super vital to the formulation, but it is a big part of the theme of the formulation. So in that sort of spirit of notion, if you're swapping the cocoa butter out, you might consider renaming the formulation or changing up the theme. And then lastly, how potent is the carrier oil? In the world of carrier oils, there aren't a lot of them that are super potent that are gonna make a massive difference in any formulation at 1 or 2%, but there are a few of them and you will want to tread carefully with them. Very strongly colored carrier oils like sea buckthorn fruit oil can make your product extremely orange. So if you had a cleansing oil formulation that called for something with like no color, like fractionated coconut oil, and you swap it out for sea buckthorn fruit oil, that cleansing oil will dye you orange. You'll also want to watch out for very strongly scented carrier oils, not like shea butter or cocoa butter strongly scented, but neem oil strongly scented, the sort of scent where it comes through at 1 to 2%. If you swap a really pungent carrier oil like neem oil for a carrier oil that doesn't really smell like anything and is used, above 1%, you probably will end up wanting to throw that product out because it's gonna smell like barbecue sauce and onions. And with all that in mind, here are 4 strategies for making carrier oil substitutions. Please feel free to mix and match these strategies based on what you're making and the ingredients that you have on hand. Strategy number 1 is match the format of the oil. And by format, I mean use a liquid oil instead of a liquid oil, use a soft butter instead of a soft butter, use a brittle butter instead of a brittle butter. The format of an oil is determined by the state that it is in at room temperature wherever you are. So where I am, coconut oil is kind of a soft oil, but if you live somewhere quite warm, coconut oil is probably a liquid oil for you. Keeping the format the same when making oil substitutions is generally a good idea in most cases. It is going to be the most important in anhydrous formulations that contain a lot of oils and butters, while something like emulsions and shampoo bars can be more forgiving. As always, the more of any oil that is in a formulation, the more important it is to keep the format the same. When working with oils and butters where the melting point is above kind of reasonable ambient temperature for you, you'll want to keep both the format and the melting point in mind. For example, shea butter and cocoa butter are both solid at room temperature, but shea butter is a soft solid while cocoa butter is a brittle solid. So they generally don't make good alternatives for one another unless the usage rate is very low. For another example, shea butter and coconut oil for me are both soft at room temperature, but shea butter melts around 37 degrees Celsius, which is a very hot day for us here in Canada, while coconut oil melts at 24 degrees Celsius, which is just kind of a nice day here in Canada. An anhydrous formulation made with higher melting point shea butter will be much more thermally stable than a formulation made with lower melting point coconut oil. As such, I really don't recommend swapping them for each other. Strategy number 2 is matching the absorption and skin feel of the oil. This strategy is extra important when the absorption and skin feel of your final product is also extra important. As with strategy number 1, this ends up being more important with high oil content formulations like body butters or facial oils than it is with formulations like shampoo bars or lotions that contain quite a lot less oil. For an example, both mango butter and shea butter are soft butters with a similarly creamy feel, but shea butter feels much more heavy and oily on the skin than mango butter, which feels really quite light. Because they are both soft butters, you could try using shea butter instead of mango butter in something like a whipped body butter, but that finished product would be much heavier and more oily. How much this matters to you will really depend on how much you like or dislike heavier, greasier products. I'm not saying that you can't do it, it's just a thing that you need to keep in mind. Strategy number 3 is matching the price point. This consideration is most important for rinse-off formulations. When I make rinse-off formulations that include oils, products like cleansing oils, cleansing balms, and cleansing creams, I like to make sure I'm sticking to cheaper carrier oils because the product is a rinse-off product. It's going to be in contact with your skin for maybe a minute before getting rinsed down the drain. Well, you certainly could use something luxurious like camellia seed oil or argan oil instead of a cheaper oil like grapeseed oil or safflower oil in a cleansing balm formulation. Why would you choose something that costs, 4 times, 10 times the price when it's really not going to improve or change the function of the formulation in any meaningful way? And strategy number 4 is to work at matching the fatty acid composition and the special benefits of the oil. This consideration is most important when we are looking to harness the skincare benefits of a specific oil. For example, I love including evening primrose oil in facial formulations because its high concentrations of linoleic and gamma-linolenic acids make it amazing for acne-prone skin. If you wanted to swap it out, I would recommend looking for other oils that have a similar fatty acid composition, like borage oil or black currant oil, so that you still get those benefits. The Modern Cosmetics textbook is a great resource for this sort of swapping research. Each carrier oil profile includes suggestions and considerations. If you'd like to learn more about this book, I published a full review on my blog, and I'll link to it in the description box below. You can also personalize the benefits of a formulation by swapping out the carrier oil. Say you are looking at a facial formulation that calls for jojoba oil, but you know that your skin prefers argan oil. Go ahead and make that swap. You know your skin best. And that is it. So to recap, the more of an oil is present in a formulation, the more important it is, and the more a swap of it is going to impact the finished product. Try to match format, absorption speed, skin feel, price point, and benefits. And just try it. Start small, take lots of notes, and don't be afraid to break the rules and see what happens. If you'd like to learn more about shea butter, please click here. And if you'd like to learn about some ingredients that will make your formulations smell awful, click here. Thanks so much. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.